Again, take two. What's up, everyone? It's Monday night, January 5th. Do I look like a goof wearing sunglasses right now in the house? You know, I wanted to do this live for everybody. A few people were like, oh, please, could you put on a little bit of Don Tony retro stuff? And I was like, all right, I'll do it for tonight. But, what's funny? I actually started about 10 minutes ago. And I'm talking and I'm commenting about the sunglasses. And I'm like, hey, everybody, should I keep the glasses on or should I put on the regular glasses? In fact, I know everybody can see me now. So let me know. Should I keep the sunglasses on or should I leave these on? And by the way, I apologize about Monday. It was nerves. This is the first time. Well, this is the second time I'm ever doing video. I'm getting a crash course in this. And me, I'm a stickler to, giving you as best as I possibly can. And people were telling me that I kept doing this. So I am listening to everyone, and I will make a concerted effort to tweak little things here and there. Should I leave the sunglasses on or leave the regular glasses on? I mean, if I leave the regular all right, everybody's saying sunglasses. I was going to wear a Met shirt today, and I took it out of the closet, and then I just realized, wait a minute, this is not a Met shirt. This is a Jason Solomonster shirt. Yeah, I'm a fan of Jason. I bought his merchandise in the past. Trust me, I didn't buy it because they said, oh, one day I'm going to do a podcast and show everyone. I wonder if Jason ever bought a Don Tony shirt. Something tells me he hasn't. But no, I have a lot of respect for Jason. For some reason, people created this feud that we both looked back and laughed at. And yeah, we're critical of each other's comments at times. But he's a fucking great guy. And, I want to say this right off the bat. I apologize to anybody who is doing a live YouTube show right now after AEW and NXT. Truth be told, that this is episode 17 of Wednesday Night Don-O-Mite, and I have been doing this for 17 weeks at this time, right after the two shows on TV. So going to video was nothing different because if people tuned in for me live before, they just had audio. Now you got audio and video. So I promise you, everyone, I did not go video on Wednesday night to try to screw anybody who was doing a live show. That is not my style. And, I just wanted to throw that out there because, that's the last thing that I would really want to do is disrespect anybody. By the way, speaking of respect and disrespect, much love to all of you. Jesus Christ. The response that I got from Monday was unbelievable. Do you know that there was only, and I don't want to give any individual names, I accept criticism, but there was only 3 people out of about 5,000 that had anything negative to say about yours truly going video since Monday. And that just blows me away. And I'm like, if people out there don't like that I'm going this route, you don't have to like me. There's plenty of other shows out there. There's plenty of other things to do. But to hurt my feelings like that, I'm like, you don't understand. I don't cry. I don't whimper, and I don't go to Twitter for revenge. What I try to do is to get all of you motherfuckers that are listening and watching right now and enjoying this. That's my revenge. Success is my form of revenge. It's always been that way. And that's the way it's always going to be. I'm not 16 years old. I'm getting a little bit old over here. And maybe the sunglasses are good because it kind of like hides the wrinkles. And I'm sorry. Oh, shout out to cereal and grape juice. I look like a gangster. Well, I was the Don Tony character. I don't want to embarrass myself, but somebody who does a lot of podcasts on video with a blue check mark was talking to me the last 2 days, giving me advice, little pointers, tips. He actually told me the idea about getting low wattage bulbs. Monday had 85 watt bulbs. Now these are 45 watt bulbs. But he also told me, he's like, Anthony, your video's from the chest up. If you're going to go Don Tony with the suit and everything, you don't have to wear suit pants. You don't have to wear, like big time socks. I promise you I'm not naked right now, but Let's just say I don't have suit clothes below my waist. So, yeah, my goal is to have 10,000 subscribers by the end of March. We're already up to like 4,300, and the video's only been on for 48 hours. But look, I want to just say one last thing, and we'll move on because we got a ton of stuff to get into today. I can honestly tell you, this is 17 episodes now of Wednesday Night Don-O-Mite. This week is probably the biggest news week in non-WWE since I could remember. Some people that are loyal listeners for a long time are going to really be surprised with what I'm about to say. Remember when Jeff Jarrett said wrestling boom? And I laughed at it. And we did, where's the boom and all that stuff. And I think we proved. I think I was the only person in the beginning that just totally thought the guy was nuts. And I don't want to hear, oh, well, he was ahead of his time. Look, if I predicted all of you were going to die, sooner or later I'm going to be right in every case. You can't just say he's going to be a wrestling boom and then 9 years later there's a boom. I told all of you. No, that don't work that way. Wait 7-9 years and then fucking predict it. But anyway, are we in the cusp of a wrestling boom now? Or are we having MLW, Impact Wrestling? I don't want to include AEW because AEW is obviously on the next level because they inked a TV extension today with TNT, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But you look at Ring of Honor, you look at all the other feds out there, are they all just trying to get some of your coin? Because, like I said, take note of all of the feds out there that talk about 5% increase, 10% increase, biggest pay-per-view buy rate yet, but they never give you fucking numbers. So is there a wrestling boom where millions of fans that fell out of love with wrestling are suddenly back? Or are they all trying to fight to see who gets your money first? I'm not sure right now. I'm torn in the middle. And I'll say something else too. Are you surprised that we have heard nothing about AEW WrestleMania weekend? Is it pride on their part? Because everybody has made it WWE versus AEW, WWE versus AEW, that if they promote something in Florida WrestleMania weekend, you're only getting these people because WrestleMania is here. I don't know. I'm a little surprised that we have heard nothing about AEW WrestleMania weekend. Now, they did announce tonight that Jon Moxley is going to wrestle for Bloodsport WrestleMania weekend. But, I stress the word weekend. It doesn't mean that Moxley can't compete anywhere. I'm curious. Oh, by the way, people want to know what's in the freezer. I'm pissed off, Allergic. And tomorrow, I'm probably, since I don't have to do a show, and by the way, breakfast soup tomorrow may be postponed until the weekend. I don't want to blow up Mish's spot, but, Mish is not going to be on Wrestling Soup tomorrow night. And I think Lee from RCWR is going to be hosting with Joey Numbers and Draper. It's going to be a great show. Definitely tune in. But the truth is that Mish is moving. He is moving to the Northeast. And tomorrow, I think, is move day. So I'm obviously not going to tell Mish, hey, could you postpone your move? We got breakfast soup to do. So we'll probably do breakfast soup during the weekend. Yes, it'll be video. Yes, it'll be on Patreon. And, just for everybody out there, I will let you know on Patreon about tomorrow. But if anybody asks, what's going on with Mish, he's in the middle of a move. That's best way to say it. But, just getting back what I was saying before, I'm a little surprised that you haven't heard nothing about AEW and WrestleMania weekend. I mean, I don't know. It's just me. That's just me. But anyway, we got a lot of news to get into today, but you know what? Look, this show obviously is not Raw or SmackDown. And yes, this wrestler really was not Raw or SmackDown, even though I think he appeared once or twice on TV. Didn't he do a tag match with The Rock one time? But it would be very disrespectful if I didn't mention this right from the get-go. But rest in peace, Rocky Johnson. 75 years old, father of The Rock. Everybody that follows me a long time knows I became a wrestling fan as a very, very young kid, back in 1979, 1982, 83 was where wrestling exploded for me. I was a curious fan from 79 to 82, but once Snooker got pile driven twice by Ray the Crippler Stevens, that's where I caught on. And Rocky Johnson was a bright spot of my childhood as a wrestling fan. Anybody that goes back with me years, even the Hotline days, know when I used to reminisce about being a young wrestling fan, Rocky Johnson's name came up a lot. And I always point to one match that if you go watch it, it's no big deal. It's a quick match. It's a bullshit match. It's a TV match that we saw late at night on regular television. But I will always remember when Rocky Johnson fought the Magnificent Morocco on TV for the Intercontinental Championship, and Danny Davis was the referee. And Lou Albano was trying to get in the ring, and he's teasing that he's going to put his foot in the ring, and finally his foot crosses the middle rope. Danny Davis calls for the bell. They give you the impression on TV that Rocky Johnson just won the IC title. Fans are going nuts. That pop that night always stuck with me. And I have brought that story up countless times over the years. But he died today at the age of 75, and a lot of tributes from wrestling fans. And even if you're a younger wrestling fan that never saw him wrestle, just go back, and he had so much charisma, and you could see little things where, you know, you could see a little bit of The Rock, or the opposite, or a little bit of The Rock would have a little bit of his dad in him. And some people got confused on social media when I wrote, you know, my memories of The Rock. For a short period of time, you would hear Pat Patterson call Rocky Johnson The Rock. In fact, I don't know if it was The Rock or Don Morocco. I know later on they called Don Morocco The Rock also. But if I remember correctly, did they call the People's Champion once or twice? Was it Rocky Johnson or was it Don Morocco? I think it might have been Rocky Johnson. I got to look it up because, trust me, if that comment was made even one time on a TV match in 1983, people on YouTube have talked about it. But he did die today at the age 75. And thank you for, you know, really being a big part of my childhood as a wrestling fan. It was absolutely phenomenal to grow up and see wrestlers like him. He wasn't my all-time favorite. Snooker was at that time. Speaking of Snooker, is anybody with Ortiz? You get a little feel without him, you know, with the braids or whatever. Does it feel like a little bit of 82 Snooker with the wild hair and the goatee, you know? I don't know. To me, it feels a little bit like a little bit of Snooker. But, you know, I just want to also make mention of this. We have commented over the last couple of weeks that AEW did not seem to be using Santana and Ortiz the way that we thought that they would have been used. And we found out that Santana, his father, passed away a few weeks back. And, you know, it's just, that's terrible. I mean, his father passed away. Ken Shamrock just posted that I think his father was sent home on hospice. So, you know, it's just a lot of, I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but I think it's only appropriate that we give our thoughts and prayers to Santana, to Ken Shamrock, to the family of Rocky Johnson. I mentioned a couple of passings on Monday. Pampiro Firpo, Kendo Nakasaki, which I totally forgot about Monday. That's on me. And, you know, kudos for Jim Ross paying tribute to all the wrestlers today. I don't know if people saw the opening of AEW Dynamite, but it was really, really cool to hear Jim Ross pay a little tribute to them. And La Parka. Let's remember La Parka as well. And again, like I said on Monday, you know, people writing in parentheses in a title, not that La Parka, so fucking disrespectful, you have no idea. You know what? For all of those goofs that did that about La Parka's death, you know what I hope? I hope that their fathers divorce their mothers and their fathers remarry. All right. And I want all those goofy podcasts to not accept their new mother. And then 10, 20, 30 years from now, when their stepmother dies and people pay tribute, Or better yet, when their real mother dies and people pay tribute, I want them to put on the beginning of the fucking, the eulogy, not that mother, not that wife, the other wife. See how you fucking feel about that. By the way, I have to tone down my vulgar language a little bit. You don't have to be a saint on YouTube, but obviously I need to conform a little bit, especially if this goes to another level, which it may happen down the line, it may not. I'm not doing this because, I like seeing myself wearing a suit and goofy sunglasses in the middle, in my house at 10 o'clock at night. But, it was really cool. And, the opening match tonight for AEW, you had the Young Bucks versus Hangman Page and Kenny Omega versus Santana and Ortiz. And by the way, did anybody notice that they did not call Santana and Ortiz the proud and the powerful tonight? I'm not saying it's because of me, but I know a lot of you out there agreed with me, and a lot of you out there said it as well. Proud and the powerful, I don't know. It just doesn't seem, we're all proud. We're all powerful. But it just didn't seem to fit in with them, and I hope they get rid of that moniker. Just call them Santana and Ortiz. And tonight they did not call them Proud and the Powerful. But we had the opening match, Omega and Page versus Santana Ortiz versus Best Friends versus the Young Bucks. Bravo AEW. I've given criticism, and trust me, I will be doing criticism tonight. Chris Statlander, what happened the other day? No, this is a time where I have to take my glasses off. This was last week with Awesome Kong, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but Awesome Kong doing her impression of Mama Shango, where she doesn't even connect with Chris Statlander, and Chris Statlander's like, what happened today? That I actually wrote yesterday that maybe I get to bring back the Statlander two-step. I named that yesterday. And would I step in shit? I mean, I can't stand up because then I'll reveal what I'm wearing down there. Down here? Down there. But Statlander, I made the little remark yesterday, maybe we'll bring the Statlander two-step on Wednesday night. And what does she do today? The Statlander two-step. Did you see that two fucking moves that she did on, as I call, Rhea ripoff? Mel, trust me, Melanie Cruz is not a bad wrestler. I'm undecided if I want to put this on Chris Statlander or if I want to put it on Melanie Cruz, because sometimes you're only as good as your opponent. And to me, I feel that this may be more on Mel because she wasn't paying attention. But Statlander should also have the wherewithal that if Mel is not, in the right position, you don't just fucking do your spot anyway. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to my Twitter at DonTonyD and see what I'm talking about. And by the way, I won't be doing this all night long. I took notice of what some of you said on Monday. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to Freddie J. I want to give a shout out to Best in the World. Thank you very much. This super chat thing I'm still new with. And this is the reason why I'm not doing Discord tonight. I want to focus on all of you tuning in live. I want to focus on everybody that is watching this right now. I'm reading your comments. It's not easy to try to remember everything. Read all the comments, and I do have some notes in the background. The cool thing about the glasses is you think I'm looking right at you right now, but right now I'm actually looking at my boxer shorts saying I should have wore pants today, But no, I mean, look, Tony Khan, and this is what I was going to say before. I have given some criticism for Tony Khan, and deservingly so, in my opinion. But Tony Khan, when he said that he's really listening and AEW is listening to everybody out there, they may not acknowledge everybody out there, but they are listening. And you could see little subtle changes that is going on TV. Case in point, the opening match for the number one contendership, no DQ match, gets rid of the Game Genie rules. Think about that. If you watch that match today, if that would have been not a no DQ match, we would have once again said Game Genie rules. They made it no DQ. Sure, look, the match was not absolutely perfect. Having all the wrestlers waiting to have someone dive onto you, just like they did with DDP later on. It is what it is. It happens in NXT. It happens in every fucking federation out there. So I have no issue with that. It's more, for me, it's more camera work than anything else. But the idea that they made this no DQ today was an excellent decision. The match was great. On the flip side, and I don't want to jump back and forth like this, but on the flip side, on NXT, you had their opening match, and well, actually, we'll talk about that later because Keith Lee had the confrontation with Undisputed Era. But NXT had an excellent show today as well. We now know the new challenger for Rhea Ripley's NXT Women's Championship, which is Bianca Belair. I think many of us thought that Io Shirai was going to get it. How many of you really enjoyed Mercedes Martinez having that little confrontation with Shayna Baszler in the middle of the ring? I thought that was phenomenal. Mercedes Martinez, when she came out for that match, her eyes looked red. I think that she was very emotional backstage because she was waiting for this moment. Maybe, obviously the main roster might be where she wants to end up. But I'll be honest with you, at her age now, I think her remaining in NXT is probably the way to go. And when I saw her performing, I don't think anybody out there thought that she was going to win this today, but it kind of felt as she was doing her thing in the ring that this might have also been a little, innocent, little, message to AEW like, oh, you missed your opportunity. It's all about opportunity, everyone, even what I'm doing right here. I wanted to share what we were doing with others. Some people don't do video. Someone in particular thought that my idea of doing this is stupid and I'm just trying to be a middle-aged YouTube star, which I just thought was so moronic to say, but so untrue. I want to talk to you straight, eye to eye. When I do the show audio only and you see Chris Statlander going like, I'm getting dizzy doing that. Statlander, you got to stop that. You can't see none of that. I want to have fun. I want to be able to show things, but it's about opportunity. Now, I don't know where this is going to go. Maybe 2 months from now, there's no more video. I have no idea. But, I got the opportunity. I have an opportunity of possibly going to satellite radio. I'm going to take the opportunity. It's not just, hey, let me take the opportunity. There's a lot of work involved as well. Mercedes Martinez, maybe AEW really missed out on an opportunity. I mean, the fact that Awesome Kong cannot compete today because she was not medically cleared due to illness, and they put Brandy Rhodes in that spot. I'm not going to criticize Brandy Rhodes, but you see what was going on in that match. The crowd was dead. And Brandy Rhodes, I know she is playing a heel character on social media as well, that if she didn't step up as she wrote, then, there would have been no women's match tonight. And I say this in storyline. Where the fuck are all your women? What do you mean if I didn't step up, there would have been no women's match? She was trying to make it sound like there were no other women that could have competed. That's fucking disgusting. And it's even stupider. If it ends up, we find out on AEW Dark that women had a match, it's like, I don't know. I did not like that match at all. It just felt like filler. Brandy Rhodes, I guess this is kind of a compliment and maybe a dig at the same time. She's better suited backstage segments on the microphone. In the ring, there is really not much there, in my opinion. But the opening match tonight, let's give AEW their due. It was a phenomenal match. And we now have Hangman Page and Kenny Omega as the number one contenders for the AEW tag titles. They're going to take on SCU on Jericho's cruise, and I will repeat something that I said on Monday. In storyline, why is Moxley allowed on that cruise ship? He just bashed a champagne bottle over the person who is running that cruise. Wouldn't it have made more sense, especially since this pay-per-view is not for another 6 weeks? Wouldn't it have made sense to ban Moxley from the ship and Moxley maybe, like I said, it's kind of stupid when you think about security and going on a cruise ship, but maybe Moxley, like conceals himself and he's got a disguise on and then he attacks Jericho. I don't think it was absolutely necessary to have Moxley versus Pac, and I know I'm giving some match results away, but this is not spoilers. I just comment about matches. I don't do match-by-match results. That's never what this was about. But I just feel like, why not just do it the following week? You ban Moxley. Moxley shows up anyway, causes a headache for Jericho. Moxley should have interfered and caused Jurassic Express to get the win next week. I don't understand why you would keep announcing Moxley on that ship. Where is Jericho to say, you're not allowed on my ship? You're not allowed on my cruise. Yeah, I know, throw him overboard. It's not as simple as you think, Dave. How many times you hear about people falling overboard? And I know, you may think, because they're intoxicated, but you get thrown overboard in the middle of the ocean, there's a good chance you're going to die from that. It ain't going to be like, let me throw him a raft. Let me throw him one of those little, big donuts. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. Moxley like that, risk taker. Fucking die. So that's the only thing I don't like about it. You could have had Pac versus Moxley the following week, and you do a storyline where Moxley is banned from the cruise. Easy, simple. You still got 6 freaking weeks to build this up. But speaking of that, I said this on Monday and I'll repeat it here. Moxley is going to take on Pac, fine. Whatever. Hangman Page and Omega, if they have a split, if Hangman Page turns heel, there is no rush to do it right now. I said this on Monday. I think you definitely need to have a couple of shots of Hangman Page having a couple of cold ones with the fans on the ship. And, maybe a week or two down the line, you have a little falling out. It may happen next week. SCU, in my opinion, may retain. There's 2 ways to go with this. Hangman Page and Omega win the tag titles. They keep the belts for 2 or 3 weeks. Then they have some type of, fuck up in the ring. They lose the belts. Hangman Page turns on Omega. That's one scenario. The second scenario is they lose next week. They have a little bit of, a little fuck up in the ring. And then Page turns on Omega either next week or the week after. So we'll see which way they go. But I don't know. Like I said, I just think with the Moxley thing again, they should have just banned them from the ship. Shout out to Adam DeMoy. Moxley is the lunatic fringe. Even more of a reason. He's a lunatic fringe. You don't allow him on the ship. Just if he's going to be walking around, meeting with people, and Jericho just happens to be 9 feet away, like New Japan, we're not supposed to remember that. They're in the same building, the same locker room together. I'm just trying to play storyline. I always try to think a little bit of one step ahead of everything. But, I will say this also. When Tony Schiavone opened up and mentioned Bash at the Beach, I'm not going to lie, I thought that, that was a nice little nostalgic feel of WCW from back in the day. And I also noticed some people tonight another tag team match to open Dynamite. Back in the 90s when Nitro was on the air, we were always greeted, well, not always, but we were usually greeted with a cruiserweight match to open Nitro. Mysterio, Hoovy, Malenko, Guerrero, Jericho sometimes, La Parka, not that one. See? So I have no problem with tag team matches open. If it's a great fucking match, it's a great fucking match. That's how I look at it. But anyway, I will say this. And again, I don't mean to jump back and forth, but NXT, their open was Keith Lee cutting a promo, how he's going to take Roderick Strong's North American title. This was going up against the opener of AEW Dynamite. And, Yeah, Dave, I agree with you. A lot of AEW haters out there, like they criticize it, and I just don't understand. If you don't like the product, just ignore it. But they want to be involved in the conversation. You can't have it both ways. I don't know. But I will say this. After the Keith Lee Undisputed Era segment, and we had the Broserweights, Pete Dunne and Matt Riddle taking on Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster from NXT UK. That was an excellent match. But that match went on way too long. Way too long. But anyway, thank you, Shezi Ali. AEW Dark. I'm not going to give spoilers because that hasn't aired yet. But you have Evil Uno and Grayson versus Brandon Cutler and Sonny Kiss. Jurassic Express versus the Strong Hearts, Big Swall versus Diamante, and Nyla Rose had a tables match with Shauna. Now, again, you see, that goes back to what I said before. Brandy with this I know she wants to be a heel, but if you're going to depend on social media that much to advance characters and try to, make things make sense, you just said that shit, and now you got 4 fucking women on AEW Dark. I don't know. I just didn't like that. I just thought it was stupid. I mean, yeah, look, they ate the pin. Brandy wasn't the one that got pinned, by the way. But, look, like I said, the opening match tonight for NXT was decent, but it went way too fucking long. AEW, their opening match was phenomenal. Next match, we had the women's match, Melanie Cruz, Mel, who I call Rhea Ripoff. It's nothing personal against Melanie Cruz, but to me, she looks like a ripoff of Rhea Ripley. It's just me. She teamed up with Brandy Rose. They lost to Chris Statlander and Hikaru Shida. You had Dr. Luther at ringside again. Jim Ross, I appreciate what he says, but if fans don't want to do research about Dr. Luther, don't even fucking tell them, especially when you start researching, you realize how much of a hardcore legend he was in the areas that he worked. And then you just see him getting punked out by the women 2 weeks in a row. It doesn't say much for Dr. Luther, and I almost feel like we see it coming. I don't know if you feel this way, but you almost feel like Brandy Rhodes, she's going to kick Dr. Luther out of the Nightmare Collective. In fact, Awesome Khan can't cut his hair. Well, he could cut some hair, but we're not going to see that. But she could probably powerbomb him and fuck him up a little bit, and Dr. Luther will be bye-bye. Speaking of fucking things up, and I don't mean to go back and forth, but I understand Impact Wrestling is really trying to create an identity. And yeah, I know the Tessa Blanchard situation, they wanted to dissipate a little bit right now. I'm not going to get into the Tessa Blanchard situation here because on Monday, I talked about it for about 20 minutes. I'll give you the results from the pay-per-view a little bit later. I thought the pay-per-view was very good for Impact Wrestling's, the content. But the one thing that does amaze me is their TV show following it. Yeah, they did a recap. Yeah, they had a little bit more confrontation with Tessa Blanchard, and Sami Callihan. But, the 2 clips that they decided to float all over social media was Joey Ryan and his dick with Johnny Swinger, and RVD's celebration with his 2 girls or his girlfriend and his girlfriend's girlfriend in a hotel room. And I don't know if you saw that yet. RVD reinventing himself. This is funny. It's entertaining. I like it. I have no problem with it. The problem is that it's almost like, somebody who's an alcoholic. You got to know when to say when. And they decided to do that whole scene in the bed, and they're distorting, his girlfriend's tits or his girlfriend's tits. And, it just was too over the top. And Twitch knocked him off. Twitch told Impact, get the fuck off our channel with that shit. And look, do I think it's permanent? No, I don't think it's permanent. They probably got a temporary ban. and they'll probably have to really tone down a little bit of their content. RVD right now is entertained. This is not on RVD, but Impact Wrestling is so, again, just look at what they pushed on social media since yesterday. The Dick Flip and RVD segment. Sorry, Impact Wrestling. If you think that you're going to be, if they're obviously trying to be attitude, and they're obviously trying to make social statements. Tessa Blanchard winning the title, I've said this before, and I said it on Monday. Putting all the controversy aside, the storyline that built for 7 months, it led to the right conclusion as far as the storyline goes. How long she keeps the belt, I have no idea. They're going to be coming to New York, I think, in April. Rebellion, I'll check the date in a minute. But I don't know how long she keeps that belt. The storyline led to the right conclusion. Now, for anybody out there that does not follow Impact Wrestling on a week-by-week basis, and you're only finding out about the storyline over the last 2 or 3 weeks, you may look at it and be like, wait a minute, how come a girl that small could beat somebody? The whole storyline, you got to be invested in it, or you just can't just jump in there, make a catchy tweet. You might get 50 or 60 likes from people online, and you think, hey, I'm fucking smart. You see, look at all the... And that doesn't mean shit. But, again, you're going to make a powerful statement like that, and then you decide what you're going to push all over social media is Joey Ryan's dick flip and RVD with 2 naked women in his bed. It just, I don't... You're trying to make history with a woman being your heavyweight champion. And then at the same time, you're putting that's smart. And don't get me wrong, I'm not, an altar boy here. I don't mind, a little bit of adult content here and there. I'm not a fan of the dick flip. I think it's, Papa Shanga stupid. But, it is what it is. Some people find it funny. Some people enjoy it. I totally respect that. If you like that, fine with me. But Impact Wrestling, it feels like, it reminds me of goofs that I always make fun of. Goofs on Twitter that will try to tweet the catchiest thing to just get hits and likes. And when they're not getting enough attention, they'll reminisce about, things from yesteryear to make everybody else reminisce. Or they'll talk about something that nobody gives a fuck about. Just because there's other people bored out there, they'll get tons of hits. It's like, let me say whatever I can to get some attention. So when I turn my Big Bird night light off at night to go to bed, I feel like everybody likes me because I got 44 likes on Twitter tonight because of a goofy post. That's what Impact Wrestling feels like right now. Let's tweet, let's fucking post whatever the fuck we can that could get us the most. They're just trying. But, look, Tessa Blanchard is the champion. Let's see where it goes. Should Tessa turn full-blown heel? I don't know. But I will say this, Ring of Honor, for a while I've been saying that Ring of Honor and Impact Wrestling are competing to see who goes out of business first. Ring of Honor made some moves the last couple of days, and will we see Ring of Honor maybe have a little bit of interaction with the NWA? For those that don't know, NWA's Hard Times pay-per-view, Nick Aldis is going to be taking on Flip Gordon of Ring of Honor. Will Ospreay is now signed for Supercard of Honor WrestleMania weekend. Marty Scurll is going to be there, obviously. Brody King, Roosh, Kenny King, Amy Rose, Dragon Lee's going to be there. And Marty Scurll, look, there's a little bit of confusion online. Is he the head booker? Is he not the head booker? Is Delirious the head booker still? It doesn't matter. Marty Scurll, however, even if you think he looks goofy, all right, some of the most successful people that come aboard different types of entertainment, sometimes the most unexpected people end up being your MVPs. Marty Scurll, just because he doesn't have a history of being a booker or working behind the scenes doesn't mean that he doesn't have it up here. So I say to everybody out there, give Marty Scurll a chance to have his influence. There was some word going around that Marty Scurll was heavily involved with the idea of having a free show in Baltimore. When you have money problems the way Ring of Honor does, it's not, bankruptcy problems, but when you're not getting the revenue that you should, maybe having a free show is not the best thing to do. But, look, if they're going to pay Marty Scurll the kind of coin that they're paying him, give it a shot. See where it goes. But the idea of NWA, Nick Aldis having a little interaction, and by the way, for those that are interested, thank God I have my bulletproof coffee today, by the way, tonight, because, my mind is racing right now. Little things are coming in my head, and I'm like, oh, yeah. If anybody out there that's checked out Vicky Guerrero's podcast, and I swear on my mom, I don't have any of these notes in front of me, but Vicky Guerrero's going to be interviewing Nick Aldis, and you can send in questions to ask him. You have, if I remember correctly, you have until 10 o'clock Thursday morning, the 16th, to send in questions for Vicky Guerrero's podcast with Nick Aldis. But, look, you got Nick Aldis doing a little interaction with Ring of Honor. Nick Aldis showed up at Ring of Honor's last event. You hear Marty Scurll saying that he wants to do something with AEW. If anybody remembers, last year, what did I say last year? That I honestly thought some of these promotions were going to try, maybe not on the Vern Gagne level, but we would have some super cards. Anybody remember me saying that multiple times? I think 2020 is going to be the year of commingling with these promotions. All right, case in point, NWA, and yes, I am going back and forth, but that's how I do these shows. And this will drive Dells crazy because Dells wants to put little clips on YouTube so people could go right to things, and I'll bring up something now and I'll go back to it later and this and that. I apologize. Dells is really helping me out with the clips. I promise you next week, I don't know if I'm going to be on Monday. And by the way, let me just give everybody a programming alert. If I am not on this Monday's DTKC show, that episode will be audio only because obviously I'm the only one that knows how to do the video. Hell, I'm the only one that does the recording too. But I can hit, record on audio and leave the room. I just wanted to take a Monday off, especially since I know Kev is going to want to talk about Tessa Blanchard and talk about this and talk about this stuff that I already talked about. I really don't want to sit there and have the same conversation that I had Monday and now. So just a little heads up with that. But getting back to NWA, they have their TV title tournament coming up at their pay-per-view. And the TV results this week led to some matches going down. Now, as a result of all of this, we have Block A in the tournament of Tim Storm. He's going to be taking on Zane Dawson. Now, next week on NWA Power, they're going to announce the names of 2 open slots. What are the open slots? They're teasing it as 2 wrestlers that are not currently on the NWA roster. So Ricky Starks at Hard Times, Ricky Starks is going to face open slot. They're going to announce next week who Ricky Starks' opponent is going to be. Zicky Dice, who is in Block B, they're also going to announce who his opponent is going to be in the tournament at Hard Times. Then you have the question mark, who is going to be taking on the winner of Thomas Latimer and Trevor Murdoch. That match takes place next week. So now, the reason why I'm saying all this in the middle of this is because since we have Nick Aldis showing up at Ring of Honor, since we have him taking on Flip Gordon at Hard Times, it would not surprise me if one or both of the wrestlers next week that they announced in the NWA TV title tournament are Ring of Honor guys. And wouldn't it be something if a Ring of Honor wrestler is announced and that Ring of Honor wrestler ends up winning the TV title at NWA Hard Times pay-per-view and then cuts a promo and says he's bringing the title back to Ring of Honor? That starts a little feud. I don't know if AEW is going to commingle with Ring of Honor, to be honest with you. I think Ring of Honor is still going to try to do work with New Japan. I believe New Japan is going to be appearing at Ring of Honor's event, WrestleMania weekend. It'll probably be commingled. So I think 2020 is going to be the year of commingling. How much of it is on AEW's end? I don't know. You have some wrestlers in AEW that are working other areas. Case in point, Joey Janela, GCW. I don't have the clip in front of me. I apologize, Shaheen. I completely forgot to cue it up. But, Joey Janela was a big mainstay in GCW, and they had a farewell from him recently because he was going to be AEW. And now he appeared again over the weekend, and I think he might be doing commentary, but he's obviously going to get in the ring. MJF, who we told everybody was leaving MLW, we told all of you about a month ago that was happening. He's gone there, but you are going to see some wrestlers still working in other promotions, which is smart because you have them hone their craft. But now after AEW landed this TV deal, for those that don't know, AEW announced today that they got a 4-year TV extension with TNT. The rumored amount of the TV extension is $175 million. Average $45 million a year, 43, and change. That is a big deal for AEW. That is security. That allows them to sign some additional talent. They really need to, 3 months from now, we need at least 1 or 2 new big names in AEW. 3 months from now. I think Brody Lee, a lot of people think, Brody Lee, Villain Enterprises, whatever, blah, 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 blah. I think Brody Lee has to go to AEW. I think 3 months from now, which would be right after WrestleMania, I think we should all remember this. I think 3 months from now, we have to have at least 2 big names appearing in AEW that are not appearing right now. Getting $175 million is huge for AEW. Not only that, they have agreed to launch a second show. Now, this was something that was talked about last year, and a lot of people, including me, were like, second show, launch your first one, then worry about your second show. Now, we don't know what that show is going to be. Me personally, I like the idea of them moving AEW Dark to TNT. I actually, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not the first person who said this tonight, but I love this idea. I think having a Saturday night, 5 p.m., 6 p.m. show on TNT, just to have AEW Dark, who gives a shit if Jericho and Moxley and Omega and some of these are not on there? Of course, you'll probably have one high-profile match to be on that card. You don't want to have, all of the up-and-comers and no, big names at all. But I think moving AEW Dark to TNT on maybe a Saturday night, 6 p.m., you could still have AEW Dark on TV, on YouTube as well. The problem with that, though, is if you're going to work out a deal with TNT, and TNT is going to get, obviously, advertising revenue, they're not going to be, I don't think they'd be too keen about splitting hits or views with YouTube or online service. So it's very possible. No, I don't think 605. That's NWA, WCW stuff. No, I think just flat out 6 p.m. Saturday night. It's not a bad time. You have the up-and-comers. You have one high-profile match at the end, and that's it. So this is great for AEW. This is great for wrestling fans in general. Because like I said, you've had some people out there, and I see some of you in the chat who have brought up some examples. You've had some people out there that are saying, 6 months from now, a year from now, AEW's history. Well, as of right now, they're going to be around for at least four more years. Now, there was a little bit of confusion online because with the press release, they were talking about an average of like 1.2 million fans. what they are doing is they're combining the live rating and those who watch it, I guess, on replay, DVR, you know, just the streaming service for TNT. And I have somebody saying Saturday night 6:05. What would the start time be? It would be 6:05. But AEW, you know, I personally think this is a great move. It is an excellent move. And I have no problem with them combining the viewership like that. Sure, some people are watching it twice. What do you care? You know what I mean? If you double dip, you know, you double dip. You know, that's so good for AEW, good for TNT, good for wrestling fans. Because now, you know, put it this way also. Now the fact that they got 4 years of security, now they could treat some things more like a marathon and not a sprint. Because some Hall of Famers have even said over the last couple of weeks, they thought that, I think Mick Foley was the most recent one to say it, that AEW really, like, just, you know, burnt through that storyline with Jericho and Cody, you know, so freaking fast. Like, they just started on TV and that big storyline is already gone. And we've talked about it before that, you know, they're just blowing their load way too fast with some stuff. And, you know, I think now they can ease back a little bit on the gas pedal. They could treat it more like a marathon, not a sprint. And way back when AEW first debuted, I said that they would end up around 700,000 to 800,000 viewers on average. I'm still sticking with that number, although I honestly think tonight, I think AEW probably beats NXT in the ratings again. You know, I had so much going on tonight that it really hasn't sunk in as far as what I think the ratings are going to be. On Patreon, I think I was within 20,000 of what NXT's rating was going to be. So I was pretty close, but I think AEW beats NXT in the ratings this week by about 170,000 viewers. I think AEW put on a good enough show today, although I will say I don't know if I would have went with Pac versus Darby Allin to close out Dynamite. Maybe because they knew NXT was going to be doing this big women's battle royal that they went with that. I don't know if it's also that AEW was not confident about Moxley and Guevara closing out the show. Sure, they did the whole ambulance spot where, you know, Moxley got beat up. They put him in an ambulance. It's funny how the ambulance stood parked in the back for an hour and 20 minutes. And then, you know, and it was funny too, because Moxley was trying to kick the door open on the ambulance. Anybody see that when he kicked the door in the ambulance and couldn't kick it open? So he just he was like, fuck it. He just flicked the handle inside. I thought that was pretty funny, but you know, I'm not knocking it. I don't mind goofiness, but tonight, as I said earlier, and I have to make mention to it one more time, you know, the Statlander two-step, I didn't specifically say what actually happened tonight, but if you go on my YouTube, my Twitter, @DonTonyD, I put up the clip. Statlander at one point had Rhea Ripley outside the ring, and Statlander is standing on the apron. Rhea Ripley looks a little bit discombobulated, and the camera, again, this goes back to wrestlers like Conan and Disco Inferno and others. Jericho, I even think, was on that interview as well, that a lot of wrestlers don't know where the red button is, where the big center camera is. The camera's right smack in front of Statlander. And Statlander goes for a kick, and she totally misses. I mean, it might have grazed the shoulder of Mel, and Mel is like thrown back. And then Statlander goes for like a moonsault or a flip, and just with her hand, like, it was just god awful. I've seen a lot of Statlander's work trying to get a crash course on her when she first, you know, was coming into AEW. And again, I don't know, I'm not sure who I want to really put that blame more on, but I kind of give it to both, because you have to have the wherewithal to know that if somebody's out of position, you can't have it in your mind that I'm going to do the moonsault Whether I just tap her with my finger or connect beautifully, I'm going to do it anyway. You can't have that fucking mindset. And yeah, I know, who am I to say that? I'm not the one in the ring and this and that. But my God, I mean, she did the moonsault and just... And seriously, if you would have took that little fucking... well, no, we can't do that on the show. Sorry. If we took some... No, we can't. I think you get my point. But anyway, just getting back to AEW a little bit more tonight. So we had that little schmaz with Moxley and Guevara. You know, not a bad match, but I think it kind of fell flat a little bit. You know, Moxley gets attacked, and this is supposed to further the feud. Again, you know, as I said earlier, sorry to beat a dead horse, but... You know, after what Moxley did with the champagne bottle and beating the fuck out of him, you know, it just makes no sense why Jericho would allow him on the cruise ship. You know, he could show up anyway. How did he get on here? Wouldn't it be funny? Seriously. And I got to be careful because, you know, I have boxer shorts on. I'm not going to lie because I wanted to be a little bit comfortable while I do this. Plus, it's hot in here with these bulbs. I don't want to be sweating bullets. But could you imagine if you're on the cruise ship and they're like, hey, who's that? And you look in the ocean and you see Moxley with a rowboat going. Oh, my God. I think that would be so fucking... They wouldn't do that, obviously. Could you picture him on a little fucking skiff trying to catch up to the boat? Almost like the Meatballs moment with the guy. I'm not going to keep flashing the glasses, so... Anyway... For those that are listening audio only, I'm sorry if I get a little animated and you're like, what the fuck is he doing right now? See, this is what I've been wanting to do. I want to have fun. I want to be able to poke fun and just laugh a little bit. You know, I'm not going to lie, man. You know, someone who I called a friend that is a fellow podcaster said, I don't need to be a middle-aged YouTube wannabe middle-aged star. And I'm like... Man, that's pretty harsh, right? It's pretty fucking harsh. Anyway. We're full steam ahead, everybody. Donzilla Army, we're full steam ahead. You know, people are going to regret not joining up. And when they like, hey, where is everybody? Bye. Anyway, let's get back to AEW. Because how long have we gone now? I'm gone I'm only gone an hour so far. I started a little bit late today because once again, I think nerves. I got a little bit of technical difficulty. I forgot to hit the button that says live, and I was chatting with everybody, and I'm like, Minga, how come nobody's fucking answering my questions? And then I realized that, I forgot to hit stream live. Now, on the download, or maybe late tonight after I edit the beginning of this a little bit, you're going to be like, oh, well, I didn't see nothing wrong with the video. But everybody that's listening live, you know, they stuck around for a few extra minutes so I can, you know, redo this. And thank you very much for that. I promise you by next week, even if I'm not on Monday, by next Wednesday's Wednesday Night Don-O-Mite, a lot of these little kinks will be out of here. Trust me. And even the background with the furniture. I got another little, so I don't know if you could see this behind me. You see that over there? I got another one of those cabinets being delivered tomorrow. I'm going to put that together. That's going to go where the fucking food freezer is. And I'm going to clean up this area a little bit more. Some of you have sent gifts that I want to put on display. Even though this has nothing to do with wrestling, but Dell's, he got me, because Prince was my favorite performer growing up. He got me this really cool, so I want to put things in the background. So, and yeah, we'll be doing, where's Kev? He's probably home right now. Wait a minute, I just realized, Money, Kev is never on Wednesday Night Dynamite. Why would you even think that? This is Wednesday Night Dynamite. It's hosted by yours truly. So anyway, let's get back to AEW a little bit, because I want to move on to NXT. We had Dustin Rhodes, QT Marshall, and Diamond Dallas Page versus The Butcher, The Blade, and MJF. As I said last week, this is to help get MJF a little bit more over. And, you know, DDP was going to give him a little bit of the rub as well. again, I mentioned this Monday, and obviously I said it before we had the match tonight with DDP. I don't know why people make such a big deal that Big Show came back for a little while the last 2 weeks, and why DDP has a match. DDP's 70 fucking years old. All right. I guarantee you, if you're a basketball fan, a baseball fan, and you have a favorite player that, you know, is still really good. I'm not saying to make a comeback in their sport, but if you see him in an old timers game and it's 70 years old, they hit a home run or, you know, they nail a 3-pointer. I mean, you mean to tell me for one fucking night, you can't just say like, wow, you know, if that was one more match in one moment, you know, yeah, when he climbed the top rope and he dove, everybody's standing there waiting. I have to take the glass off of this. And they're almost in awe because, you know, when you get starstruck with your eyes and you blink, you go. That's what they were all allowed when DDP climbed the top rope. I loved it. I loved it. He wasn't going to get, and even if he did, even if he would have got a win today, thank God he didn't, because honestly, nobody on that team should have gotten pinned. Definitely not MJF, and the Butcher and the Blade, they already, you know, screwed them up just so Darby Allin and Cody could have a match. And I'll repeat what I said Monday. If you haven't done so yet, you want to get to learn a little bit more about Darby Allin, go seek out his appearance on Talk Is Jericho. I listened to it, and a really phenomenal interview. Jericho obviously has plenty of time to keep a guest on for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe longer, and you could really get to know that person. That's obviously something that AEW cannot do on television, but you listen to it, and you want to root for Darby Allin a little bit more. You know, some of his attitude, you kind of get rubbed the wrong way a little bit, but you know, I really enjoyed his appearance with Jericho, and you really should go check that out. Botch Club, I appreciate, you know, what you're writing on there, but, you know, just PM me on Twitter at Don Tony D, and I'll be happy to plug next week, whatever you want me to plug. But, you know, just wrapping up AEW Dynamite today. Once again, Darby Allin versus Pac. You know, decent back and forth match, but, you know, I'm just not, you know, it didn't feel like a main event match. You know, I know their whole goal was to have Moxley, you know, break down the door of the ambulance. I'm not going to the hospital, and I'll see you next week, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, whatever. And it's like, you know, I don't know if I would have done that at the expense of a main event. I don't know. I was a little confused with that decision, but it is what it is. And, you know, that's how AEW went off the air. Take note that I didn't bring up Michael Nakazawa. I don't call him Michael Nakazawa. I call him Michael Nakazawa. Michael Nakazawa. Does anybody give a shit about Michael Nakazawa? I mean, I think AEW should have learned a lesson when they had Kenny Omega going, no, when Pac was beating him up. He's like Kenny from South Park, the one that keeps dying? It's like every week, Michael Nakazawa gets the shit knocked out of him. And I'm sorry, I have no sympathy whatsoever that Nakazawa is getting beat up. There has been no character development. There's no sympathy. He joins the Dark Order. I think it's going to be more funny the way you pronounce it. You know, me, Dakota. Like Dakota. Me, Dakota. Me, I joined Dakota. I don't care about Michael Nakazawa. And AEW, please, I'm not trying to be a dick right now. I guarantee you, most of the people listening right now are going to say the same thing as well. Michael Nakazawa has not been a main star on TV in the past. He's not recovering from some form of serious illness where we have a little sympathy. Oh, he's making a comeback. Oh, let's root for him. You know, he's getting beat up in the back. And how goofy is that? You know, that Pac beats the shit out of him, and you go to commercial breaks, and you have Omega hunting through all these dressing rooms, trying to find his buddy. And then nothing. I mean, you could see it. Oh, Michael Nakazawa is going to join the Dark Order because nobody was there for him when he was getting beat up. And they're welcoming me. Take it in. You know, me, no, Dakara. Me member, Dakara. Me member. Like a little baby being cradled. Do I give a shit? Kill the fucking guy. I don't mean literally, but nobody cares about Michael Nakazawa. Anyway, let's move on to NXT tonight. And trust me, we got more news and stuff to get into. You know, I got a lot of stuff to talk about. You know, it's cool because I actually burned through a few things tonight that, you know, I don't have to keep rehashing, thank God. And, you know, yes, tonight might be a little bit longer than usual because some big news broke, you know, over the past weekend. And, you know, a lot of companies had some big events. Ring of Honor had a decent night in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, I really got a kick out of Maria Manic and the Bully Ray spot. You know, everybody is so worried about Maria Manic because, Teddy Hart has her under a spell. Was she fucking 15 years old? What are you, her big brother now? I don't know, man. I think just some people out there, you know, you can't even put like a photo of yourself online and you put cartoon character pics or old pics or baby pics. You have no position to be saying how somebody else should be. If you're that concerned for her well-being, call the fucking cops. Call law enforcement. What are you going to say? I watched the YouTube channel, and she wants to be mixed martial arts, and he was training her, and he actually hit her in the face, and she was crying. You got to do something about that. You got to do something. Where's the Mounties? Teddy Hart's from Canada. Where's the Mounties? Shut up. Shut up. You know, she's you know, big, well, I don't say big boy. She's an adult. Whatever she wants to do, she does. Don't you get it? They're on YouTube. I'm starting to understand a little bit. They're on YouTube because they know that people are talking about them. Anyway, Ring of Honor, like I said, had a decent night over the weekend with their Center Sage event in Georgia. Ring of Honor might not be dead yet. You know, they are trying to make some moves. And once again, as I said before, give Marty Scurll the benefit of the doubt. Supercard of Honor, that's going to be in Florida. You know, they are going to be announcing some members of Bullet Club. I don't have the information in front of me. Next week, I'll bring some more information. I think Jay White is confirmed. Will Ospreay is also confirmed. Now, the only thing is that I'm not familiar with the building, but a few people had told me that where Ring of Honor is having their event at the RP Funding Center, that's like 40 miles away from WrestleMania or that neck of the woods. You know, trust me, you know, in my neck of the woods, driving 40 miles to go out, that's kind of, you know, pushing it, you know. So I'm sure some fans are definitely going to want to go, but it's not going to be in the same vicinity. See, like when we had WrestleMania weekend early this year, even when we had to get together at Lucky 13, where a lot of these places had their events, even I think House of Glory, it was only about maybe 10 miles, 15 miles from Manhattan. So, you know, there's a big difference between 10 miles and 40 miles. But, you know, look, they're still doing some work with New Japan. They're going to be in Florida. And I think there may be some life after all for Ring of Honor. Let's see what happens in 2020. Now, with very quickly, and before I get into NXT, I might as well bang these out of the way. NWA, I think most of the news will be next week once we know all the brackets for the title tournament. You know, Scott Steiner showing up there. You know, I did find it funny that all Scott Steiner said was white trash and they had to censor that out. You know, look, maybe that is a YouTube standard. You know, I didn't censor it out, but, you know, Scott Steiner, look, he could still talk. He's still, you know, okay in the ring. He's not embarrassing. You know, they got to get some, you know, recognizable names. And yes, if you follow NWA, a lot of the names are recognizable, but you know what I mean. More of the household names. But I just remember what I said. 2 years ago, I said AEW would be the first millennial promotion, true millennial promotion. And I think people now understand why I said that. I think 2020 is going to be the year of commingling with promotions. You're going to see promotions work with each other a lot more than before. And the interesting thing is going to see how much AEW takes part in that. Because I think now at AEW with this security, these other promotions need AEW a hell of a lot more than AEW needs them. I'm sure a lot of you out there would have some fantasy ideas of seeing Marty Scurll in AEW or seeing Nick Aldis confront Cody, which don't give me the history. I already know what you're talking about. But it would be cool to see some people showing up in different areas. I just don't know if AEW needs to go that route. But we'll wait and see. And by the way, I mentioned earlier, a few people were asking, Jon Moxley is going to take on Josh Barnett at Bloodsport. That was supposed to take place, I think, last year, but because he had that infection with his elbow or something, it didn't take place. And by the way, before I don't want to keep, look, obviously with Super Chat, some of you, definitely deserve to get some special shout out, especially for those that are, putting these super days. I'm still getting used to this Super Chat setup. I never even, first of all, this blows away Discord and Mixler with all due respect. And it's not because people could send a couple of dollars here or there. It's just very, very lively, very active. And believe it or not, you may not realize this, but we do have 3 moderators in the chat on YouTube. There'll always be at least one there. And if you notice, everybody is pretty cool. But Rick Velez, James Boatwright, and if anybody goes back to the Minority Report days, you might remember someone by the name of Deadpool. But shout out to all 3 of them because they surfaced on Monday's show that I did. And it was really cool to see those names pop up again. Now, I don't mean to put other people aside, but especially Deadpool. Because anybody remembers Minority Report, Deadpool would come on often and we would talk wrestling, and very, very smart guy. Haven't heard that guy's name in over a decade. So now let's talk a little bit about NXT. Now, before I even talk about tonight's show, they announced the latest members to join NXT and at the Developmental Center. Mercedes Martinez, not only did she just sign with them, but we got to see her tonight in a Battle Royal. They have some other names, which I guarantee you have not really seen before. You go on WWE's website, you'll see the profiles. One wrestler, Kenny Marquez, who some of you know as Jake Atlas, they talked about how his dream is to become the first openly gay WWE champion. There's some interesting people there. There's someone who used to play football, NFL football, I might add. I think Anthony Francis is his name. But, it's an interesting, new group of people. But tonight we had NXT go down. Not a bad show. I think, in my opinion, some matches may have run a little bit too long. Case in point, I mentioned earlier, Keith Lee had come out and, basically said that Undisputed Era, they have all the belts, and Undisputed Era might have reached their peak. They may have reached their limit, but Keith Lee is limitless. This leads to them coming out, beating them down. We had Ciampa make an appearance. And this is all to set up Roderick Strong versus Keith Lee next week, which I'm definitely looking forward to. I mean, I've said it repeatedly. Keith Lee is my favorite NXT wrestler. And let's see if he gets that belt. But it was not a bad way to open NXT. But right after that, we had Matt Riddle and Pete Dunne versus Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster in the tournament, for Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Tournament. This match went on almost 20 minutes. Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster are very talented. You see them featured on NXT UK. They are phenomenal performers. But in my opinion, and just in my opinion, there is no way, shape, or form that those two guys should even last 10 minutes with not only Pete Dunne, but Matt Riddle as well. Way too long, in my opinion. If the match would have went 10 minutes, 11 minutes, I would have said, okay, that's a good enough time. But the idea that they could go almost 20 minutes with Riddle and Pete Dunne, I don't know. It gets to a point where I don't know. The match was great, but just way too long for me, in my opinion. And believe it or not, after the next match, we're already in hour number 2. We had Kushida and Alex Shelley lose to the grizzled young veterans. I don't know how many out there thought that Zach Gibson and James Drake were going to advance in this tournament, but I know I didn't. It was great to see Alex Shelley teaming up with Kushida. After the match was over, you had GY. See, I almost said that too fast. The grizzled young veterans, GYV. They were basically, calling Alex Shelley, great tag team or great, talents from yesteryear. I don't know. Again, another match where it was very good. I know they want to try to boost some of these talents, but, I don't know. Zach Gibson and James Drake, I don't have that connection yet, but I really thought Kushida and Alex Shelley would advance, but they did not. Next, we had an interesting match, Isaiah Swerve Scott versus Leo Rush versus Tyler Breeze for a spot in the four-way NXT Cruiserweight title match at Worlds Collide. They had Angel Garza on commentary, back to being a heel, I might add. We had that moment where he got engaged, and not trying to be an asshole, but my fiance's ring blows away your fiance's ring. I have to say that, even though she's not here right now. But, it was a decent match. It's very energetic. All three of them are very talented. And, you had Isaiah Swerve Scott get the win. Tyler Breeze, it's a shame what happened when Fandango injured again. I'm a little concerned about Fandango's future in wrestling because he keeps getting injured. He's in phenomenal shape, but sometimes you just become injury prone, and he's not doing anything wrong for that to happen. It's just happening. You just don't get to feel like Tyler Breeze is going to get any type of momentum out of this. But it was a solid match nonetheless. I don't mind Tyler Breeze being on 205 Live or Cruiserweight Division, whatever you want to call it. I just don't want to see Tyler Breeze showing up on Raw and getting squashed by Eric Rowan. Just leave him in NXT. Even if he doesn't appear every week, leave him on NXT. He doesn't need to do a squash for others. Let us enjoy, what little, momentum he has, if any. He's very talented and probably should have gone a little bit further than he has with WWE. That night where they had that tag team title match on a main product, and I remember they had the brooms or the other stuff, I honestly thought they should have got the belts then. Even if they lost it a week later, I really wanted to see them get those belts. They didn't get it. But finally, we had the Battle Royal for the NXT Women's title shot at NXT TakeOver, Portland. Entries were Shayna Baszler, Mia Yim, Xia Li, as some people say, Bianca Belair, Candice LeRae, Casey Cananzaro making a return, Mercedes Martinez, Tegan Knox, Vanessa Bourne, MJ Jenkins, Deonna Purrazzo, Kaden Carter, Mia Yim, Shotzi Blackheart. She had an important role tonight. Io Shirai, Catalina, Jessie Camilla, and Santana Garrett. And as I said, I'm not trying to brag, but, you're not going to find any other podcast out there that's going to be this detailed and watch both shows side by side and take this much notes. And not only watch, but let it penetrate. Battle Royal started a little bit late. I know tonight we were supposed to start the show at 10 after 10. I think it went off the air at 10:09. So we may have to start these shows from now on at 10:15. This way we have 5 minutes of, getting situated. So I think going forward, 10:15 will be the start time of this show going forward. But it was a fun battle royal. It had its moments here and there. You having Tegan Nox, once again getting screwed by Dakota Kai. Io Shirai was my pick to win this, especially with Poppy's album coming out. I thought, okay, maybe, Io Shirai gets a little bit of a rub. Maybe not necessarily because Rhea Ripley is a baby face and Io Shirai, the fans just want to stay behind her. I don't know if they want to have that little bit of, in fact, I have to mention this too. I don't know how you all felt tonight, but to me, it felt like Kenny Omega got the biggest pop from the AEW fans tonight. I don't know. I mean, Cody got a tremendous pop as well. Cody cutting a great promo once again, agreeing to all the stipulations with the match with MJF. I don't know why you would agree to 10 lashings as easy as that. And as I said to you a week ago, we'll probably have Cody get handcuffed to the rope, and he'll probably get those 10 lashings when he fights Wardlow in the cage. But anyway, the Battle Royal was fun. I love the back and forth with Shayna Baszler and Mercedes Martinez. Ate that up. I think some people out there thought that Shayna Baszler was going to get a rematch for the title. And, one point we thought that she was going to, possibly win it. She ended up eliminating Mercedes Martinez. It came down to the final four, which was Tegan Nox, Io Shirai, Rhea Ripley, and Shayna Baszler. And next thing you know, we realized that Shotzi Blackheart was not eliminated. Earlier in the match, she got thrown out of the ring, but she was not eliminated, and she would re-enter the ring, and she would throw Shayna Baszler over the top rope, and the crowd ate it up. So now we're down to basically Io Shirai, Rhea Ripley. Not Rhea Ripley. Io Shirai. Who were the other two? Tegan Nox, who got screwed, and Bianca Belair. So really, after Tegan Nox gets screwed, it's Bianca Belair going at it with Io Shirai. Kind of went a little bit longer than I think we thought it would. Again, Bianca Belair's hair getting involved in the match. At one point, Io Shirai was stepping on her hair, and then Bianca Belair just yanked it from underneath Io Shirai's feet. And, they had some good back and forth, but in the end, Bianca Belair eliminates Io Shirai and gets the spot against Rhea Ripley. My immediate reaction is I have no problem with Bianca Belair taking on Rhea Ripley. I don't think there's any chance at all of Bianca Belair winning the NXT Women's Championship right now. They're not going to screw with that momentum that Rhea Ripley has. And it was a decent night. But for me overall, again, the Dunn Riddle match just went a little bit too long for me. I just found myself, and I know some people are going to disagree with me on this, but I found myself enjoying AEW a little bit more. The opening match, especially that they made it no DQ, was excellent. Moxley versus Guevara, wasn't that bad. Guevara is still up and coming. I don't think anybody should expect him to be completely polished right from the get-go. But, it was a decent night. And I do believe that AEW will win in the ratings again. And we'll have to deal with social media tomorrow, people rubbing shit in other people's faces and this and that, but whatever. Impact Wrestling, as I talked earlier, they had their Hard to Kill pay-per-view over the weekend. Tessa Blanchard winning the Impact Wrestling Heavyweight Championship. I've already exhausted that. Dells, you don't have to put this as a clip because there's not much that we have to talk about with it. Moose over Rhino, the North over Willie Mack in a handicap match to retain the Impact Tag titles. Eddie Edwards versus Michael Elgin in the Call Your Shot Trophy. This is Impact Wrestling's Money in the Bank version. That match, honestly, I enjoyed more than any other because the one thing that Elgin and Edwards did that a lot of people have a hard time doing these days is not only telling a great story in the ring, but also making you feel that what they're gunning for is very important. It's like the women's battle royal today, with all due respect, some of those women just flying over the top rope. It's like, come on, in suspension of disbelief, this is a shot at the NXT Women's Championship. And to see people just flying over like, I'll go to Starbucks after, grab a coffee, and all will be good. You know, it's just, I don't know. I'm a stickler to detail a little bit. Now, obviously, not every single person in a battle royal could have, you know, that suspension of disbelief that, you know, it's do or die. You know, you got to get this shot. But, you know, I really enjoyed the storytelling that Eddie Edwards and Michael Elgin did in that match. RVD over Daga, you know, look, Brian Cage, there's rumors he signed with AEW. His wife says that he hasn't signed the dotted line yet. It was just a weird segue because, you know, the way Daga entered the ring, and then all of a sudden they call for the bell. You know, I let it go because it's Impact Wrestling. We don't have to put it on WrestleMania level. You know, if you enjoyed it overall, that's all that matters. Ace Austin over Trey Miguel to retain the X Division Championship. The match was good. You know, they pushed the storyline for weeks. You know, I don't know. It felt like Leo Rush and Garza. I mean, it kind of, I don't know. I never like really bought into it. Ken Shamrock over Madman Fulton, you know, so. But overall, it was not a bad card. I don't think anybody really, you know, should have complained. By the way, their next pay-per-view is Rebellion. It's going to take place at Terminal 5 in New York City. I don't have the date in front of me, but I will look into it. And as soon as I get more information, look, it's not until April, so we got plenty of time to talk about it. Now, few people had asked me if I'm going to go to AEW in Newark. And, you know, I'm going to announce something here that's going to disappoint some people. I wasn't going to say anything until tomorrow, but I might as well say it now. I unfortunately have to cancel going to Chicago. I will post my Travelocity, you know, transactions to show everyone that I wasn't blowing smoke. But there's a couple of things going on. Number one, I had a very long conversation with Mish. And since Mish is very, you know, heavily involved with moving and coming to the Northeast, Chicago was really fucked up in the first place. The fact that we lost the opportunity to do a Q&A at C2E2 really kind of spoiled it for a lot of us. And not only that, I mean, you know, we looked into going to AEW's pay-per-view, you know, in Chicago that weekend of C2E2, the end of, you know, the last weekend of February. I looked into the Skybox. I looked into, you know, because a few people was talking about maybe getting some press passes, doing some interviews with AEW. And, you know, it's funny because I know a lot of people in my quote-unquote inner circle trash AEW, but I think I am very fair. I criticize a lot of stuff, but I always try to come up with solutions and ways. I mean, you know me. I've been saying, get rid of the Game Genie rules. Do a no DQ. Solves it. Perfect. They did some changes, but got no response whatsoever. Nothing. I mean, when you hear, oh, you know, we want to do this and interact, I mean, there's no denying that my audience out there, and I'm not saying this to flex or, you know, sound conceited or anything, but all of you listening and tuning in, whether it's still audio only or video or, you know, just getting, you know, back into my shows, we got a gigantic audience and, you know, always in the top 5 of any, you know, wrestling podcast out there, you know, that's not, you know, with a blue check mark at the end of their name. And I got no response whatsoever. And I'm saying to myself, you know, why am I going to blow that kind of coin to go to a fucking comic book or sci-fi, whatever the hell it is, that fucking took away the opportunity of a Q&A? Why am I going to go to a pay-per-view where, you know, I'm looking to get all of the Donzilla Army that's going to C2E2, and we all hang out at AEW's pay-per-view, maybe get a skybox, maybe do this, and ask if you, and nobody gets back to you. And I'm talking about people with AEW. So honestly, Newark, I get in my car and I drive for 45 minutes. Chicago, I have to get plane, hotel, rent a car. I honestly, especially I just got engaged, it's like, why am I going to fucking go all the way down there, go to a convention that I don't like anything that's there? Sure, hang out with some of you out there, but a lot of you are going to C2E2 to meet a lot of the stars there, to enjoy yourself, and you're not going to be going there just to break bread with me. So unfortunately, I have to cancel. Plus, my parents have to go back to Florida to finalize a sale of a property. And they weren't going until April. And they were also looking at February 25th to March 7th. And I said, you know what, go. And they're like, no, but you got Chicago. I'm like, yeah, but you want to know something? Half of the people that were of Wrestling Soup, I'm not even sure is going to be going now because of everything that happened. So, I know John Krause and others are very disappointed with that, but I promise you sometime this year, whether if it ends up being Mania, if it ends up being Toy Fair, we're having to get, now because Mish is going to be living in the Northeast with where I am, we're going to have get-togethers like crazy. Joey Numbers lives on the Northeast. John Draper lives in the Northeast. Mish will be living in the Northeast. I'm living in the Northeast. I don't know if Kev Castle is going to be coming out also, but he lives on the Northeast. And there's a lot of others that live on the Northeast. Solomon stuff. So there's opportunity of having more get-togethers. But I just want to be straight up with everyone out there. I didn't want this to lead into when it gets closer, and then that's what's going on. And I apologize. Like I said, if I would have got a little bit of, receptive, a little response from AEW, then, I would have said, hey, you know what? It's even if I just go and hang out in my hotel room until a pay-per-view, it would have been worth it. But if I'm not going to fucking get any response back, fuck it. I'll put my money to Newark. What am I going to spend? Gas fare? And one of my good patrons has a connection in the building. I'm going to probably get in there for nothing. So that's what I have to say. Not, to the people out there that fucking ignored, I don't need no hand job. I don't need no fucking follows on social media. But, we're trying to get your fucking, show. I know you don't need me or any of my listeners or anybody tuning in. But, the idea that, you just ignore a lot of people, I just think that's a little bit disrespectful, especially the amount of coin that was involved to travel all the way out there. But anyway, I think we're almost done, everybody. I definitely would be very, very disrespectful to wrestling fans out there if I didn't talk about NXT TakeOver Blackpool. Excellent, excellent card. It really annoyed me. And I wrote this online. I kind of commented on Monday about it. But I understand the UK fans are extremely interactive, extremely energetic. They love the chants. And I see people online really annoyed at it. And I'm like, man, I understand sometimes people chant just to feel like they're interacting. But when you got that kind of energy, sometimes you want to bottle that. Because I guarantee you, especially if you go back and you look at Jordan Devlin and Tyler Bate, when they were standing on opposite sides of the ring and that crowd going nuts like they were, that gets inside you. That's just, oh man, you take that in and it just gives you every single person that performed at NXT TakeOver, and trust me, I believe it's the same for Ring of Honor, the same for AEW, the same for NWA, the same with MLW, the same across the board, Impact Wrestling, but you felt it extra that every wrestler that performed at NXT TakeOver Blackpool, I almost said Tool, you could feel that they took it in and they really fed off the crowd. And I enjoyed it, man. It made it that much more fun to watch. And trust me, when you have a regular insurance responsibilities to do, and relationship and sick parents, And plus trying to learn video and, shifting things around and studying and, just it's not easy to get the chance to watch all of this. But, I will admit sometimes when I watch these things back, I'll play it on like 1 1/4 speed. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, a 1 1/2. It's the only way to really be able to watch that much wrestling. And I'm trying to watch everybody, give everybody a shot. The MLW stuff, I talked about the stuff that happened in the past. That was 18 years ago. All right. Court Bauer didn't fucking kill any members of my family. Was he more of a dick back then promoting MLW? Sure. Did he screw with wrestling promotions here, including one I was involved in? Sure. But that's 18 years ago. If I fucking held a grudge still to this day, I'd feel like Robert De Niro in the movie The Fan. Coop, I thought we were pals. I thought we were friends. I thought we were buddies. Oh, that was 30 years ago. I think Court Bauer would have the right to bash a baseball bat over my head. So I'm trying to give everybody a chance. But Kylie Ray over Toni Storm and Piper Niven. And you know what? I'm very happy about Piper Niven right now. If you don't know the backdrop with that, go look it up. And look, everybody, I could appreciate a nice ass. I am impressed with Toni Storm's buttocks. Didn't come out of nowhere. I just find it a little creepy, though, when I see certain people over a certain age making such a big deal about somebody's ass that is in wrestling tights. You know what's weird about it? Seriously? It's weird about the fuss that some older men made over Toni Storm's clothed ass, but say nothing about RVD and his two babes' bare asses on Impact Wrestling. Something's a little odd with that. But, whatever. I don't know. But Tyler Bate defeats Jordan Devlin in the match of the night. I don't even think it was close. Eddie Dennis over Trent Seven. Mark Coffey and Wolfgang over Zach Gibson and James Drake. Fabian Aichner and Marcel Barthel. Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster to retain the NXT UK tag titles. Decent ladder match. Still Famito, Tyler Bate, Jordan Devlin. Loved the match. Absolutely loved it. Walter over Joe Coffey to retain the WWE UK Championship. After the match is over, Imperium is attacked by Undisputed Era. And by the way, Imperium will be on NXT next week. Don't know if it's going to pop a rating. Richard Adams, does it sound like I'm holding a grudge? I just finished saying that I'm following MLW, that I'm watching MLW, that I'm covering MLW, and it would be wrong for me to hold a grudge. I'm just trying to educate people. I don't know what you're talking about, or maybe that was your way of trying to get me to say, what's going on? Lucha fans out there. Oh, and by the way, if anybody out there that thinks I'm going to talk about Gabe Sapolsky, and that whole bullshit that's going on right now with him and David Starr, honestly, people are only realizing right now about Gabe Sapolsky. I know some people out there think I'm going to say something else. You can't. We're on YouTube now. You got to be a little bit more careful. Let's just say it rhymes with Pac. But, look, people that are finding out now, that this guy is a little bit shady. A lot of people kept silent for years because they wanted that opportunity to not only be involved in a promotion with Gabe, but also be able to cover it, to also be able to get hand jobs, to also be able to get fucking, feel like they're important. I don't blame people for doing that. But, now all of a sudden people are finding stuff out. Come on. Now that's a guy. And yeah, if somebody's asking, yeah, I am blocked from him. I've been blocked from him for a long time. It is what it is. But the best thing that came out of everything that's going on with David Starr and Gabe Sapolsky, anybody see Joey Janela's tweet? Joey Janela was pissed off about the whole thing because he was going to post nudes of himself. And because Gabe and David Starr decided to have this big fight, Joey Janela was like, fuck it, I'm not putting my nudes out there. Nobody's paying attention to me. Obviously, he was kidding, but it was funny. But I do want to plug something very quickly. And you know what? I want to mention this too. because some people out there, since I was talking about MLW, I might throw this out there now, and we're going to wrap this up soon. And I'm amazed that this show's going to end up being less than 2 hours. Nice flow tonight. I think more because of video, and you're forced to try to really have a better flow than audio. I think the shows will end up being shorter because we're doing video. But, MLW issued a press release today that they now have a working relationship with ICM Partners. Now, if you want to Google ICM Partners to understand the entire deal and what they're about, go right ahead. But in my opinion, what I think this is designed for is you look at, and this is why I said earlier that now I'm thinking, I don't think it's a wrestling boom yet, but I think you have promotions now really putting it all out there to try to be the first to get your money. It's just plain and simple. But when you hear that AEW gets $175 million from TNT, keep in mind something. This is something that nobody thought about tonight. Not only are we talking $175 million from TNT, we also have Shad Khan and Tony Khan's bank book on top of it. So they have a big nest egg to protect them. Now, getting back to MLW, I don't think MLW is nowhere on the level of an AEW. Even if MLW got a deal on a major cable TV network right now, I think it would probably get views similar to Ring of Honor, maybe a little more. They have some bright up-and-coming stars. Sure, the moves they did with Teddy Hart and ACH I thought was pretty dumb, but they have a great nucleus. And one thing you cannot deny about MLW, they definitely created an identity for themselves. Ring of Honor, it's all over the place. You feel like, the women's division might be pretty much fried right now. Impact Wrestling, we already talked about. MLW's got a nice nucleus. Out of all the promotions out there, maybe putting AEW aside, but I'll give MLW credit in this. Of all the promotions out there, it feels like MLW is the most focused on their own product. NWA as well, but, I'm not saying this to be a jerk, but NWA, Marty Scurll shows up, and then what? You know what I mean? I understand this is going to lead to something, but how many weeks later? MLW feels like they're really focused on their own nucleus. And sure, they're going to commingle here and there with other promotions, but MLW inking this deal with ICM Partners, they're not going to get even 1/3 of a deal that AEW got with TNT. But ICM Partners is pretty legit. And if MLW could land a TV deal with a major network, doesn't have to be on the level of a TBS or a TNT or anything like that, but if they could get a decent network, not named Pursuit, they can make some decent money. I think that's what MLW is thinking right now. I think they think that they might be able to land some type of a TV deal, and ICM Partners is probably going to be the one instrumental to try to find that deal for them. So we'll see what happens. I wish them well. So anyway, I want to wrap up with just something very, very quickly. Anybody that's into Lucha Libre, there is an event coming up. Now, mark it on your calendar. It is a long ways away. I will not lie. I'm a little bit concerned as far as when this event starts. August 15th and 16th at the former ECW Arena, they're going to have Expo Lucha by Masked Republic. And it's going to be a 2-night event. They're going to have meet and greets, autograph signings, wrestlers already scheduled to appear. Now, they have 2 nights of wrestling, so some of the names I say might be repeated twice. I'm reading this straight from their press release right now. But they have Psychosis, Juventud Guerrera, Super Crazy, Sabu, Damien 666, Bestia 666, Mr. Aguilar, Dragon Lee, Laredo Kid, Taya Valkyrie, Black Taurus, Demis, and more. They also have Dr. Wagner Jr., Tinibles Jr., Octagon, Piotr Morgan, Solar Jr., Mascarita Dorada, as I said, Psychosis, Hoovy, Super Crazy, Damien, Mr. Aguilar, and others. It's pretty stacked. My only concern is tickets already went on sale. VIP packages already went on sale. I think some of the VIP packages, if not all of them, are already sold out. And the fact that these went on sale in January and this event is in August, that concerns me. It concerns me very much because if you have to get funding that early in the year, it would not surprise me if this gets canceled. Do I want it canceled? No. I'm actually thinking about going. If there's any way, if anybody remembers Mongo, and if you don't know who that is, then don't even bother. But everybody remembers Mongo. Mongo was good people. He used to sell all the lucha masks here in the Northeast at the indie events. And he was the one that got me to get Halloween and Damien 666 to wrestle for Goodman back in the day. I was the one that actually got them in, but he was the representative for them. And Mongo was awesome. If anybody remembers him, he looked like Meatloaf. Remember the guy Meatloaf when he was hefty? Very, very, had a real big presence of himself. Really, really awesome guy. I haven't seen him since 2002, I think. I hope he's doing well. And I hope he's still into lucha. But this sounds like a great expo. But it concerns me when you put tickets on sale 7 months in advance. It just feels like you don't have any bankroll, to cover, like you're depending solely on the money coming in. And if it doesn't get a big response in the next couple of months, I would not be surprised if this closes before it even happens. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. But, I've seen a lot of conventions yesteryear where they announce things 7-8 months in advance, and then you realize they have no funding whatsoever. Like, as quickly as that money comes in, it comes out. So, but before we go, I want to give a shout out to Dave from American Luchas. I don't know if anybody remembers American Luchas here, East Coast Lucha Libre. Some of you in the Northeast might remember him. I hope Dave does not realize I hope he realized that I was not shitting on East Coast Lucha Libre from back in the day at Club Amanzora. Anybody that follows me on a regular basis, you might remember very recently I was telling a story about when I had laid out all the XPW bus trip money to all of my listeners because their event got canceled in February of 2003, I think it was. Anyway, sometime around there. But what was funny is this guy Slash had ripped me off. And I'm not going to tell the whole story of how Don Tony became Don Tony because something happened where I broke his glasses and, somebody cursed me out, asked me if I thought I was a Don. And I said, yeah, I'm Don fucking Tony. And that's how Don Tony name became. But the thing is that, this guy Slash ripped me off, owed me a lot of money. And it took me about 5 years to finally get my hands on him. And, I fucked him up a little bit. I uppercutted him with cannolis. He had cannolis coming out of his nose, his ears, his mouth. Fuck him. Prick bastard. But I told the story that after he screwed me out of money in 2002 or 2003 for the XPW, I was on the lookout for this guy. I was trying to find him. I wanted to beat the fuck out of him. And everybody remembers, that goes back with me those ways, remember the infamous story that Bam Bam Bigelow called the Masked Maniac and said, hey, tell de Blasi that Slash is here in Jersey right now for fucking NWA cyberspace or whatever it was. And I was going to drive out to fucking Jersey. Somehow somebody posted on a message board that I was coming to Jersey to kick his ass, and he disappeared. So he left the show early, and I couldn't find him. So anyway, he announced that he was going to be going to Club Amanzora in, I think, November of 2003, and he created a promotion called Lucha Extreme Wrestling. And he had hyped up Damien 666, Shaka. I don't know if anybody remembers Shaka. Los Lunatics, some names that you actually would know now. Halloween, Hollow Wicked, some local New York guys, Papadon, Reefer, Shark Boy was there, Scorpio Sky was there. And, it wasn't a bad card. But the funny thing was, because the situation with me and Slash was so out there, I had tons of people in the Northeast saying to me, dude, we know Slash is involved. Because of you, we're not going. And then I thought people were just, we didn't have Twitter at the time. I thought they were just tweet fucking me, like trying to make me feel good, but they're going to go and just, hide themselves. Well, they spent like $20,000 to have this Lucha Extreme Wrestling at Club Missouri, and they drew 80. And I think 30 of those fans were free. Didn't even draw 100 fans. Guy took a fucking bath. I think they tried to have one more event. I think they drew 40. And I even remember, I don't want to name any particular wrestlers, but there's one that's very, very dear to me who called me up at the time and said, dude, you can't believe how there's nobody here. Like, everybody knew that this guy Slash was such a piece of shit that everybody refused to go to this event. I hope Dave from East Coast Lucha Libre realizes now, American Luchas, I was not talking about your Fed. I was talking about Lucha Extreme Wrestling. So hopefully I cleared that up. But I figured a lot of you out there probably would enjoy the story anyway, because, it's amazing how many years have gone by. It's almost 17 years. Jesus. So anyway, I am done for this evening. I want to thank you all for listening. I'm amazed that this is going to be done under 2 hours. Blows me away. But, please be patient, because like I said, I go back to 1997 doing wrestling hotlines. After all of these years, I'm finally going video. All this is still very, very new to me. There's a lot of little things, bad habits that I got to try to nip in the bud right now. There's little things that I'm going to improve. A lot of the behind the scenes stuff I will tweak and make sure everything is nice and smooth. And even when I discuss topics, I'm going to stay more on point in the future, because I know I start a topic and then I lead to something else and then I go back to it later on. But I hope people understand now why it was so important to do video. And to be able to look at all of you in the eye, not physically, obviously, but, to be animated. Like I said, all of these years, when I do the impressions or make fun, I mean, nothing against Chris Statlander personally. She's obviously a star in the making. But, when you have last week and she's like, and then today, I mean, just like, what is this, like Indian stuff? I want to get animated. I want to be able to show you stuff. I want to once again show everyone that I'm actually a fan of Jason Solomonster, and I'm curious if he has a Don Tony shirt. Nah, I have other podcaster shirts here too, not just Wrestling Soup. You'd be surprised if I start pulling them out. I just want to have fun. The whole idea of this show is to have fun, mingle with all of you out there, and, it's going to be a work in progress. Like I said, give me about 2 months to really just, get this organized and get everything straightened out. And we will have a whole lot of fun. It's going to get so much more interactive. I will try my best to get Discord up and running again. I honestly don't think it's needed. I don't want to, and it's not going to go away completely because, all the Kev Castle shows are audio only. So that will still remain. And that's not saying it to take a shot. As I said earlier to somebody, 75% of my shows that I do is not DTKC. Breakfast Soup is not DTKC, blah, blah, blah is not DTKC. This is not DTKC. And I'm also working on, maybe creating another show. So, I don't want anybody to think that it's all video or nothing. All I know is that I needed to do this. I wanted to do this. I was very, very bored, and I've passed up a lot of opportunities in the past. And, I don't want to look back and regret that, I just did audio because, other people didn't want to do it. No, I'm doing my own thing. And, there's no animosity whatsoever. This is nothing but positive, everybody. I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and you look it straight into my eyes. No bullshit. You know, this is all about going forward, you know, just giving a little bit of a different dimension of me, having some fun, poking fun at myself, at others, and it's lighthearted. And the response that all of you have given